Good evening, everyone. We're going to start our budget presentation by talking about the student body here in Valley Stream 13. We really strive to make all of our budget decisions centered around our students. So here in Valley Stream 13, we have just over 2,000 students. 150 of them are our youngest learners in pre-K. About 7% of our students receive English as a new language services, and about 18% of our students receive special education services. And our average class size is about 21 students, and you'll hear more about class size and the consideration in the budget as we go through our presentation tonight. A little bit about our elementary program and what students experience each day. All of our students receive Tier 1 core instruction in the 4 major subject areas like English Language Arts, Math, Social Studies, and Science. Our students go to specials each day, like library, music, art, physical education. We implicitly and explicitly teach social emotional learning through special programs. And as a team, we've talked a lot about future-ready skill development and technology. We definitely look ahead. This is elementary school. We consider what students are going to face in their secondary experience, and then possibilities for them in their post-secondary pathways. As far as special services, we have many to support the various needs of our students. We have special programs and various models in the areas of special education and English as a new language. We provide speech services, services in occupational therapy and physical therapy, and we also have a teacher of the deaf in the form of a consultant model. We also have various support services to meet the needs of our students. We provide academic intervention services in the areas of reading and math. We have 3 district-wide instructional coaches in the area of literacy, math, and technology. Our coaches work alongside our teachers as well as to provide support to students. And then we have aides in all of our pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. Wellness and well-being is always a focus in our district. Some of you might remember that we did host a family event earlier this year in November that was focused on supporting students' well-being at home. Here in school, we have a psychologist and a social worker in each of our buildings. And you might remember last year in the budget process, this was a really important topic in the conversation. So a district-wide psychologist and a district-wide social worker was added. So we have Ms. Cuevas, who is our district-wide psychologist, Ms. Garcia, who's our district-wide social worker. They work with students across all 4 buildings. And then we have Mr. Boyle, our district-wide guidance counselor, who also works in all 4 of the schools. In the area of enrichment, we provide several opportunities for students. So all students have access to our innovation labs in our schools, where we have curriculum-aligned experiences that students can participate in, mainly in areas of science, technology, engineering practices. This year, something that was new, all 2nd graders received push-in support from our technology coach, Ms. Alvarado, and she taught a series of lessons about the importance of digital citizenship. Also new this year, Ms. Gary, our gifted and talented teacher, provided enrichment opportunity to all 3rd grade students using Edison robots. Edison robots provide students opportunities to do some coding, to play music, or to perform certain obstacles. And then in 4th grade, our students receive enrichment support from Ms. Gary in the area of Gravitrax, where students learn about marble runs and kinetic energy, really enriching and fun experience for kids. And then our formal gifted and talented program, or G&T as sometimes it's referred to, is for students in grades 4 to 6. We continue to receive accolades in the areas of art and music. You'll be getting an invitation soon. Most recently, our students are going to have an exhibit of their artwork at the Henry Waldinger Memorial Library in Valley Stream. So their work will be displayed throughout the month of April, and you are welcome to go and check out their work. And then in music, we have our ensembles, chorus, band, orchestra, and some specialty ensembles. We have a grade 3 recorder program, a 6th grade ukulele program, and our students participate in festivals and NYSSMA each year. As far as transportation, 48% of our students receive transportation. Additionally, 2% receive walk-back passes, and 123 students receive transportation to private or special education schools outside of the district. As I mentioned before, we just want to circle back to some of the conversations and the work that was done in the budget process last year by extending our gratitude to the community for passing the budget last year. We were able to add, again, a district-wide social worker and psychologist. We had enhanced security. Many of you, have made comments about the positive enhancements of our guards here in our buildings. We added additional clubs and assemblies. We did some updated science curriculum work. We added an additional pre-K class, additional inclusive special education classes, and we were able to maintain class sizes. So we want to thank you for that support from last year as we introduce what is new in the budget conversation for this year.
Last year, when we wanted to engage the community, we had a budget-specific thought exchange. This year, we had an overwhelming response to our strategic plan survey, and a lot of information in there did relate to priorities that the community has for a budget focus. So we use the information from the strategic plan thought exchange in developing priorities for this year's upcoming budget. Our budget priority goals this year, of course, always to make sure that our students' needs are met. One of the big things that we heard and have continued to hear over the past several years is the desire of the community to make sure that our class sizes are as low as possible. We always want to maintain the amazing programs that Dr. Radice just spoke about in the beginning of the presentation. We know that everyone has been very happy with the new security guards that we've implemented and Mr. Napolitano, our Director of Security. So we wanted to ensure that this budget was able to sustain that work. We also heard a lot from the community about improving our facilities, the grounds and playgrounds. And we want to make sure we are aligning the budget to the community's priorities and also ensuring that the community understands how the budget development process works. This year, our challenges within the budget continue to be the ongoing fluctuation in our state aid. So over the past several years, we have had a much more increased level of state aid. That has decreased again. It's still at a good state, but it's been fluctuating over the past years, and I'm going to provide you with a little bit more data on that. Our tax levy limit, or the maximum amount that we can ask the community to raise taxes this year, is at 2.12%. We're going to talk more about the tax limit as well in future slides. Something that has been very difficult to manage in the budget has been the ongoing increased cost of transportation. You may have heard that the state has required schools to have buses with electric vehicles. We do not have our own school buses, but we contract with the bus companies, and that will be required of those bus companies. So the cost of that future implementation is being passed on to the school districts. We have increased our amount of special education and EML services. Those are both mandated services. So that has more students require those services. It requires increases. We continue to be burdened. I say us, but the taxpayers are burdened by unfunded mandates. Those are things like what I just mentioned, the electric vehicle or the electric bus mandate. You're required to do it, but there's no funding given by the state. Also things like the testing program. Every school district in New York is required to test students, which has a cost to it, and none of that is funded by the state. Also, as we know, the external economic conditions impact the budget. So when the cost of goods rise outside in the community, they also rise for the school district. So increased costs of supplies and materials. So these are some of the challenges that we worked with within the current budget proposal. So going back to the feedback from the strategic plan, if you remember, we had the community survey, and then Mr. Svensson met with a variety of groups of parents, staff members, and the board administrators. We took all the information that we got from the strategic plan to decide on what we wanted to include in the budget as we built the budget. The budget building process actually starts in October. And these are some of the real highlights about what's going to be new in the budget for next year. And I hope that the community feels strongly that we have taken the input from the strategic plan, and you'll see the results of that in what the proposed budget is. So I think most importantly, something that we have been hearing and we know is important is having an assistant principal. So next year, we are implementing an assistant principal. The principal will be split between Howell and Wheeler Avenue. The responsibilities at Howell will include the pre-kindergarten program, and the second half of the day will be spent at Wheeler to support Wheeler. So we have two very large buildings in our district, Howell Road and Wheeler Avenue, both around 600 students. So this new assistant principal will do a lot to support our students, and it will allow our mental health providers to spend more time with kids. So that's a win for both of those buildings. We have managed to, again, lower the average class sizes. We are adding a half of a instrumental music teacher to Willow Road. Willow is the only building that only has one instrumental music teacher, so we're adding a second half there. Dr. Radice is currently working with the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and we anticipate putting a recommendation up to the board to adopt a new K-5 social studies program. We heard a lot in the strategic plan about the need to make our curriculums more up to date. The 6th grade already has their social studies program, so that's why they're not listed there. Another thing that we are going to do again for the second year in a row is we're going to rebalance and increase the clubs and assembly budget for each of the buildings. The assemblies, we're very lucky, a lot of the assembly in the district are supported by our PTAs, but we want to make sure in these more difficult economic times that we still are able to provide those special experiences to students through assemblies and after-school club programming. And we're going to have our writing professional development. This is also something that comes up a lot in the surveys, is that parents would like students to be able to write at a higher level. So we're going to continue to work with our teachers and ensure that they are learning the best practices towards writing instruction. We also have in the budget a .4 ENL teacher. As I mentioned before, we've had a increase in the number of students requiring English as a new language services in the district. So we're adding a .4 teacher. We are going to add a small special class at Howell next year. This is wonderful because we're really proud of our inclusive special education program in the district, and all of the students who will attend that small class at Howell are actually Howell students, so they will be able to attend that program in their home school, which is a wonderful thing. So we have the special education teacher for that, but we need a teaching assistant, so that teaching assistant is in the budget. We have Chromebook replacements, which always takes place in 2nd grade. The students have their Chromebook from 2nd grade through 6th grade, so we have the annual replacement of Chromebooks. Mrs. Amengo, who is our Director of Instructional Technology and Innovation, will be upgrading our Lego kits in our Innovation Lab program. The existing kits are pretty much end of life. These new ones have new coding capabilities, so that will be wonderful for the students. We also know that we have more work to do to improve our facilities. So we have taken this facilities code, which is $195,000 this year, and we've raised that code to $245,000 in order to do more in-house small in-house facility projects, such as last year, we changed 2 of the floors in classrooms at Wheeler Avenue School. So we'll be able to do more small projects like that. We also want to bring some of the work that we pay contractors for into the district so that we can be more cost effective and able to get work done more quickly. So we've included in the budget more manpower for our facilities through an additional maintainer. We have added carding funds for carting into the budget. Right now, only one of the buildings has garbage pickup on a regular basis. So next year, all 4 of the buildings will have that. That's a health and safety issue. It seems like a minor thing, but it's really important for keeping the facilities clean. And our last thing that is in addition to the budget is that we are going to make sure that the nursing and security staff that we have during the school year is equivalent in our summer programming. So this is something that we wanted to point out in the budget, how we've been able to reduce class sizes. This is data from the 2018-2019 school year compared to what we project for the 25-26 school year. This data is based on the February 1st enrollment data that I received from the buildings. I receive that data every month, and as we continue through the year, we'll continue to look at enrollment, and if we need to make adjustments, we can do that. We always look at the enrollment at the end of the school year, and then we look at the enrollment again right before school starts and make any adjustments to the sections. But right now, based on the planned sections, which for the 25-26 school year is 101 class sections plus 9 pre-K sections, the average class size across the district will be 19.75. And that compares to the 21.75 that we had in the 2018-19 school year. And as Dr. Radice mentioned, this year the class size average is it's about 20.5, 20.7. So the board continues to make a commitment to have sections so that there are more classes than is required by the class size guidelines.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Glad to see everybody. I normally do this to an empty crowd, so it's nice to see that everybody comes out for the budget here, for the budget meeting. So in an effort to update our buildings, we continue to do capital projects. So in the budget for the 25-26 school year, you'll see that we put money in the budget to do the Diva Library. $300,000 to do a capital project to renovate the Diva Library. When we do capital projects, we have to get a building permit through the State Education Department, Office of Facilities Planning, SED. SED's approval process has come down significantly since last year. Last year, around December, it was 28 weeks for approval. Now it's down to 8 to 12 weeks for approval. So if you remember, in this budget, the 24-25 budget, we put money in to renovate the Howell Library. That will take place over the summer of 25. So the Diva Library will take place over the summer of 26. The good thing is that when it's all said and done, all 4 libraries will be completely renovated. Then we have a proposition. So there's a proposition number 2, to spend $1.2 million from the capital reserve. The proposition is going to include improvement to the Wheeler field. So we're going to put sod on the playground over at Wheeler. We're going to put an irrigation system so that way it gets maintained all year long. We will also add we'll also add sprinklers. We'll fix the broken sprinklers around the building to make sure that the entire campus is maintained all year long. We're going to add a main structure. We're going to take out the main structure at Wheeler and add a new main structure over at the new play structure at Wheeler, and we will replace the dinosaur structure at Wheeler because that dinosaur structure is extinct. I tried. Okay. I tried to, bring a little joke into it. But anyway, at Willow, we're going to remove the adult play equipment that's at the end of the blacktop. We're going to remove that, and then we're going to add a sliding play structure. And over at Howell, we're going to add a pre-K play structure that will have a bench and play panels. So that's everything that we're doing in terms of playgrounds. We will also do security enhancements. We're going to add fencing at all of the recess areas at all 4 schools, and we're going to change the classroom locks. So right now we have key entry. We're going to change it to card swipe at all of the classrooms bathroom, and the main office. In the event of an emergency, it will be better, instead of teachers trying to fiddle around with their keys, trying to lock down the classroom, all they have to do is use their key swap. And that comes at no additional cost to the taxpayers. So, the budget for the 2025-2026 school year is $69,678,502. That's a $2.3 million increase over this year's budget. As Dr. Baraka mentioned, and you'll see in future slides, the budget doesn't increase as much as in previous years because we have lower state aid. However, the budget will be able to maintain our lower class sizes, or to provide lower class sizes, maintain all of our educational programs, and help us to improve our facilities. The tax levy associated with this budget is 2.12%, which is at our tax cap. However, that tax cap is lower than the average on Long Island. The average tax levy increase on Long Island is 2.62%. Three-part budget. The budget can be broken up in terms of three parts. You have a program component, capital component, and an admin component. The biggest part of the budget program, we spend 76% of our budget on programs. That's all expenses that are directly related to teaching and learning. That's the lion's share of the budget. That's where it should be. We want to make sure that we have the best teachers, that we provide our students with the best quality education. Then we have the capital component, 14%. That's the facilities, maintenance, and our facilities and maintenance staff. Our facilities and maintenance staff do a good job, so we are always willing to do a good job by them. And then we have the admin component. The admin component is all expenses related to our Board of Education, our central administration, supervision of curriculum instruction, finance, personnel, and legal. So those are the three parts of the budget. So we have $69.7 million in expenses. You need $69.7 million in terms of revenue. $25.7 million comes in the form of state aid. The biggest portion of our state aid is foundation aid. 75% of state aid comes in the form of foundation aid. We have building aid. 10% comes from building aid. So all of the projects that we do, we get aided at our building aid ratio of 75%. So that makes up the building aid. And then we have the expense-driven aid, that's such as transportation, hardware, software, etc. Our refund from BOCES, Medicaid staff revenue, and our pilots projected to be about the same for next year. However, the interest and the other revenue slightly down for next year. With all of the fluctuations going on in the economy, we don't expect to receive the same amount of interest that we were receiving this year, so that's down slightly. And the other revenue primarily is our summer rec revenue, any donations that we might receive, and any money that we receive whenever we rent out our buildings. Our tax levy is about $40 million. 2.12%, which is at our tax levy limit, but lower than the average on Long Island. And to offset the budget, did not need to use as much in terms of reserves, so it's down to $2.7 million for next year, down from $3.2 million this year. Revenues equal expenses, $69.7 million.
So you can see that this year's tax levy at 2.12% is a little bit higher than what we've asked the community in the past 5 years. And as I said earlier in the presentation, that has to do with the amount of state aid that we've been given. 2.12% is still a small, a relatively small amount, approximately, now I'm forgetting my numbers. That's the $2 million, sorry. That's the $2 million that Gerard mentioned. And the budget to budget is the difference between last year's amount of $67 million to this year's amount of the budget of $69 million. So relatively small budget to budget. Those budget to budgets that you saw in the prior 2 to 3 years are from the large increases in state aid that we have. One of the things that I think is sometimes difficult to understand is that we all talk about the 2% tax cap. However, the 2% tax cap doesn't necessarily mean 2%. And The tax cap limit, or the highest amount that we can raise taxes, has to do with a formula that Mr. Antoine does and has to submit to the Office of the State Comptroller. All of the school districts in New York do that. They create their tax cap calculation. They find out what the limit is. In our case, it's 2.12. They submit that to the state. And then the in the Board of Education's budget, we decide what to ask the taxpayers for. When we had those higher rates of state aid, we were able to produce the 0.75 and 1.5 requests to raise taxes. This year, with the reduction in state aid, in order to meet our obligations, it's important that we ask the community for the full amount of the 2.12%. So your tax cap calculation can actually be a negative number. It can be well over 2%. It can be under 2%. Last year, our district had the lowest tax cap calculation on Long Island. That had to do with the fact that we have done a lot of building projects. We got a lot of building aid, and then that makes that offsets so that we are not able to have as high a tax levy. So again, we do understand that this tax levy is larger than it has been in previous years, but as Mr. Antoine said, it's still relatively low compared to the average tax levy on Long Island. And it makes sure that we can maintain all of the amazing programs that we have, and it is the reason why we are able to put new things in the budget, like the assistant principal, the extra music teacher, the teaching assistant, the extra maintainer. All of those things are what the 2.12% is going to afford the community to improve our schools. And here you can see those tax state aid increases that were offsetting the tax levy in prior years. This is when the governor decided that she would commit to fully funding foundation aid for all school districts in New York State. Now we're getting back to a relatively smaller amount of state aid, but still a very good state aid amount for our district. And we're going to be watching closely to see what happens in next year's budget. Because this portion of the budget is very important. You can see that it is $25 million of the $69 million budget. So state aid is a significant portion that helps us keep all of these programs going. So the state aid difference from the prior year to this year is an additional $2 million. The tax levy that we're going to ask residents to contribute is $800,000. That gives us $2.8 million in additional revenue. As Mr. Antoine showed on his revenue slide, there are some reductions in revenue. That makes up about $561,000. So the total new funds that make up the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget, or the 3.39%, is the $2,282,428. We always like to share what we're doing with that extra $2 million. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the increased costs due to our contractual obligations. So we have contracts with all of our unions with negotiated raises. So that is the difference in last year's costs for staff is going to be an additional $741,000. As I mentioned before, there's a rise in costs of goods and services that makes up $135,000. Our additional special education costs are $300,000. The additional transportation costs are $384,000 this year. And the benefits and insurance that go with the contractual obligations is another increase of $200,000. So all of those mandatory costs are about $1.7 million. Then we have about $500,000 to make all the things that the community wants happen. So it's a very small amount of money to be able to do all of those what's new things that we shared in the beginning. But those student services like the extra music, the teaching assistant, and the ENL teacher make up about $200,000. The assistant principal will be approximately $125,000. Those additional clubs and assemblies is $25,000. and the additional maintainer and the additional money for our facilities is about $138,000. So this is the obligations we have on the one side, and this is the new money and the new programs that will benefit our schools.
Reserves, these are the reserves that we have in our district. We have several reserves when we use those reserves to offset the budget. Just want to point out one in particular, the capital reserve. The capital reserve is unique in the sense that it requires voter approval to establish and voter approval to spend from. So we're using the capital reserve in this budget. Proposition number 2, spend $1.2 million for the upgrade of playgrounds and security enhancements at no additional cost to the taxpayers. So if a school district's budget, when voted on, does not pass, school district has several options the first time around. School district can put that same budget up for revote, could change the budget, take something out and put it up for revote, or go directly to contingency. But if the budget fails the second time around, a district must adopt a contingency budget. So if we had to adopt a contingency budget, our budget would be $68,342,337. That's a $1.3 million reduction from the proposed budget. So what does that mean? That means that equipment expenses are not allowed under a contingency budget. Purchases of supplies such as pencils, paper, and basic art supplies not allowed under contingency. After school clubs, so the stipends that we pay the teachers to do all of the wonderful clubs that we have, not able to do that under contingency. Expenses related to the use of our school buildings, so if we have to pay for overtime for facilities, or if we have to pay overtime for the security, not allowed to do that under contingency. Any expense related to the transfer to capital, so we would not be able to do the DEVA library. We're not able to have new BOCES services, and we're not able to hire any aides unless that aid is required as a part of the student's IEP.
So we aim for our budget to always be responsive and fiscally responsible in these large areas that we plan for, like pre-K, our inclusive special education programs, safety and security, our high-quality instructional programs, and mental health and wellness. And then specifically for this budget, just to summarize, we are going to propose to add a district assistant principal, some additional staff, a 0.5 in the area of music, a 0.4 in the area of E&L, and then a 1.0 TA for a special education class. We have improved class sizes, continue to provide high-quality security with some enhancements. We have some renewed curriculum, more clubs and assemblies, and then enhancement of our maintenance staff and our facilities improvements.
Okay, and that's all at a 2.12% tax levy, a 3.26 budget to budget, and a total budget of $69,678,502. So at the ballot, for those of you who will be voting, you will be seeing 5 different propositions on the ballot. Remember, we are a elementary school district in District 13, but there's also the Valley Stream Central High School District. So the first proposition on the ballot will be the adoption of the budget that we just talked about. The second proposition will be to ask taxpayers to expend $1.2 million from the capital reserve. That's money that has already been collected from taxpayers. It is not an additional cost, but it does require voter approval. So in order to have what we talked about on that slide, the playgrounds, the field improvements, that is proposition 2. And then the high school district's general budget is proposition 3, and then they have 2 additional propositions, one for proposition 4 for a capital expenditure, and proposition 5 for a investment in a new building. The budget vote is on Tuesday, May 20th. It's in all 4 schools from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 p.m. We are going to be updating the district's budget information website. You will see the line-by-line budget, this budget presentation, PDF. You will also have this video, so if anybody wants to rewatch it, they can. We encourage feedback from the community. We also want to make sure that people have all their questions answered. So if anyone in the community has questions about the budget, you can email myself directly or Mr. Antoine. Our email addresses are up there. And you can also get our email addresses on the website, but we would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has so that the community can make an informed decision about the budget.